Hi, welcome to Therapy JA. Each week we interview different professionals in the mental health community in the Caribbean just to get different takes and perspectives on different issues of mental health as well as self-help and counseling. The focus is on mental health within the Caribbean, and our focus is specifically, towards men, but we also, we do both. So today I have Dr. Sonia Wynter, who is the head. Can I call you the head? Oh yeah,
Uh,
I'm sorry, Sonia Wynter, not the doctor. I don't know why.
right.
Yeah, Sonia Wynter of TreeHouse Therapy.
Yes.
She has been you've been doing counseling for over some time now. It's been what,
Yes, I
20?
started in 2013, so that would be 11 years now.
Okay. Wow, wow. Okay. So thank you so much for doing this, Miss Winter. Could you introduce yourself and just tell us your story?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Stephen. I should call you by Stephen, right? Or
You can
tell
call
me,
me Steven. That's fine.
tell
That's
me
fine.
what you prefer.
No, man. Steven is what I prefer. Yeah.
Stephen it is. And I'd prefer if you would call me Sonia, please.
Okay.
Uh, And okay, so psychology is actually my second career. I used to be a banker before, and I came to psychology in my 40s. Um, and I suspect that that has made it an even more rewarding endeavor. You know what I mean? I suspect if I had been doing it for the last 35 years, I might not have felt as rewarded as I am experiencing it to be right now, you know?
Hmm.
Um, so I'm a graduate of the University of the West Indies with my master's. Um, my first degree is a math degree, and that's relevant because the focus that I have right now is on couples. I practice mostly in terms of couples, and I see adults as adults, individuals as well. Um, the therapeutic model that I provide to couples is an evidence-based one, which uses a tremendous amount of empirical data, with a lot of statistical models, to help us to understand relationships better so that we can manipulate, manage, and predict them, in a scientific way. So I kind of gel with it for that reason, because it's so statistically robust, the mechanism that we offer to help couples. So I mentioned that. I do head up TreeHouse Therapy. TreeHouse was started in 2018, as I was a sole practitioner. And TreeHouse has grown into a beautiful family of 13 therapists today.
Mm.
Um, and we see only adults. But we specialize in treating different disorders as well as helping couples in crisis. We also help couples who are thinking about dramatic changes in their lives, thinking of getting married, getting engaged, that sort of a thing as well, in terms of helping them to just make their relationship kind of robust, as it
Mm.
were.
Mm.
Um, so that's my story and the tea house story. It's an endeavor that we all find very fulfilling.
Mhm.
At the moment, it's only female. We're all female in the practice. I'm always looking for male practitioners, but they're a rare, rare, rare breed.
Mhm.
I would love to have them in the practice because sometimes men feel a little less intimidated to come in and speak to a male therapist.
Mhm. Yeah.
Nonetheless, all the women on the team are very compassionate and
Mhm.
very warm women.
So what made you go to leave banking into therapy? What was it within yourself that was like, this is something I should be doing?
Well, whilst I was in banking, I headed up HR, the Human Resources Department of Citibank, and I had an occasion once to deal with a psychologist. She came in to help us with an employee. He was experiencing addiction. And so that was my first in for one-on-one interaction with a psychologist.
Mhm.
And then later on, when I had my family and my children were quite young, I stopped working and as a stay-at-home mom for a little while. I got a little bored with that. So I went back, had the opportunity to go back to school, you know. Um, my husband and I migrated to Barbados for a while. And whilst there, I just wandered down to Cave Hill, the university
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I remembered, boy, that experience with this psychologist was so rewarding. So at first I audited a few psychology courses and as hooked. So it's not a very dramatic story. It was just sort of wandering around, and I ended up, and so I did a diploma in psychology at Cave Hill actually. When we came home, I continued my studies here. So it was a fortuitous thing, I must tell you.
That's beautiful though. Sometimes it doesn't have to be something dramatic, you know. Sometimes it's a gradual process, but that doesn't remove just the significance of like finding a passion,
For
you
sure,
know.
which I've
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
You've smoked me out. I have found my path.
So did you always, even as a child, did you always were you always like the mediator type as a child, or you were like
I don't have that version of myself at all, I must tell you, you know. So psychology is really just kind of came and smacked me in the face in my 40s. It's not something that it's not something that, I guess that's what I mean by it's not a romantic story. It's not a long love affair by any means, but it has grown into a passion nonetheless.
okay, okay, interesting. So all right, so as I said, the focus I always take is to kind of say what the perspective and view of mental health specifically towards men. In your practice, do you have a lot of male patients? If you mind me asking, like, do you have a lot of males come in?
Well, I didn't think about it until I thought until this interview, you know. So I actually did run some numbers, which I'll share with you if you wish. Would you like me to share my screen? I did a
Oh,
few graphs
sure, go ahead.
that were quite telling. So yes, I can. So I'm so glad that you asked these questions. All right. So let me see if I can enlarge it here.
Okay.
So I did it across the years. So this green bar here that you're seeing, this green bar here is the total number of new clients that came into Tea House in 2020. The blue bar here is the females. So you see, we had about 180 females and we had about 70 males for that year. So you can see the number of clients growing across the years. You
Yeah.
know, we're up at about just under 700 new clients since 2020,
Wow.
but it's about 30% are male. And you notice the percentage has been kind of consistent. I did another little graph here to show you the percentage. Here we are.
Yeah.
So by and large, it's between 25 and 30% of the new clients coming in. It's a flat. I didn't expect it to be flat, but at the moment it's flat, you know.
And these are regulars. These are like consistent
Yeah,
clients.
well, these are new clients coming in each year.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So, and how long they stay with us would vary based on, and how many sessions they have with us would vary based on the individual, and what their needs are. So I just went by how many of all the people coming into the practice in a given year, what percentage are men. And it's generally about 30%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you say, like, how do you feel about how men view mental health out here in terms of what are the common misconceptions that you feel that men have towards mental health? It doesn't have to be men, we can just say in general. In
Yeah.
Jamaica, what are the common misconceptions you see as a
Well,
therapist?
well, the truth is, Stephen, that it's true. Men and women share misconceptions about mental health, and misconceptions that keep them away from getting help. However, I do have to admit that there's more pressure, there's more of a push factor for men away from therapy than for women, to tell you the truth. And it has to do with our idea of masculinity, to tell you the truth, that a lot of times, men are seen as a big part of masculinity is kind of being self-sufficient, being stoic, having a lot of self-control, emotional self-control. By that, I mean, being self-reliant and
Yeah.
kind of stoic. That's a kind of a hallmark in our minds culturally of what a man is. And so because mental health is often has historically been associated with insanity and madness and that sort of a thing, and individuals and how we in the past treated individuals who had really severe mental health problems. They were often, sort of pushed away out of society. They were
Ostracized.
ostracized, or the institutionalized in really terrible
Conditions, yeah.
conditions. You know what I mean? So all of those reasons make it even more difficult. That just flies in the face of the image of what a man would be. If you are going to be given to falling apart in that way and losing self-control in that way, if you're going to fall prey to madness and insanity, that is almost a blot on your masculinity in a way. So
Yeah.
that kind of image and perspective of what mental health means
Yeah.
is a big, huge part of the stigma around mental health. It causes a kind of sense of a silence around it because there's so much shame.
Yeah.
Know? It doesn't matter what your mental health challenge is. It could just be dealing with stress, or it could be something as severe as schizophrenia or something like that. It doesn't matter what it is. Just the mention of mental health can create a lot of embarrassment, shame, and silence, and so on. So I think that's really a huge factor for individuals, but you can see why it will be more of a shackle even for men because of our ideas of what masculinity really is.
Do you think that the men's fear of that stigma is justified or no?
The fear of the stigma. Here's what I would say. The stigma is changing. You know what I
Okay.
mean? I mean, if I had told you, well, let me ask you, even if I had said to you 30% of the people coming into my practice are men, is that a number that surprises you? Do you think it's high or low? You know what I mean?
I would say that's low, but to be honest, when you told me that you have a majority women, like majority female therapists, I was kind of like, yeah,
Yeah.
I
That
feel like
might,
it matches. Because to be honest with you, I think a lot of men, there's a fear of being vulnerable to a woman,
of course.
You know what I mean? There really is. I think,
Yes, it's true. A lot of men, but not all men,
not
because
all, not
some
all.
men, some men, they're more fearful of being judged by another man
Yeah,
as
it's
well,
true.
So there's, I would love to tell you, I'm always talking in statistics, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't have a good sense of what the proportions are, but for some men, a woman is more safe, and for other men, a man would be more safe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's,
no, I agree. But so when I heard the 30%, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. That kind of tracks.
but
Because
based on what I know this is sort of anecdotal, but based on how generally your friends, your colleagues, people that you meet, generally how they feel about mental health, would you have expected that
no,
30%
I would
of
say
the
30.
men you know
The
would,
seeing the rise, I was like, okay, that's good. Like, that's a sign because yeah, most of my friends don't do therapy. I think I'm the only person amongst my friends that's like pro therapy. And if a friend comes to me with problems, I'm always the first to be like, you should probably see a therapist. I'll always recommend a therapist. I'll always give them that type of help. Like, yo, here's a therapist you can reach out to. They're not that expensive. They'll meet you at your rate. So you don't have to worry about price. So, but most of my friends do not do therapy, which I kind of wanted to go into in terms of
you
for
know
couples.
what's
Sorry, go
interesting?
ahead.
I think you may say most of your friends don't do therapy, but you know what's interesting though, Stephen, that a number of men come into our practice. Unfortunately, I don't have that number either, but a number of men come into our practice because their relationship is at risk. So sometimes, a man might not go to therapy because he is having a mental health challenge. He might go because his relationship is at risk
Yeah,
more
yeah,
easily than if he were to go for his own needs, to have to admit that he himself is having a personal challenge. And then what often happens too is that at least in my practice, what happens is that a man will come in with his partner for
Yeah.
therapy. And then as he becomes more comfortable with the therapeutic process, he will then open up himself and actually request individual therapy thereafter. So
Yeah.
a lot of men enter it in that way, you know?
Yeah, I've heard stories about that too, where at first they don't want to do it, but once they start to do it, they're like, oh wow, okay,
Of course.
let's do individual sessions. I wanted to ask, why is it that men? Okay, I remember I spoke to a pastor about this because I spoke to a pastor, and his one of his takes was that men don't like counseling, and I have to say, boy, that is so true because I've had friends that are dealing with relationship issues, dealing with marriage issues that just would not do the counseling. And it
Right.
was just and it wasn't even a major issue. And it was just like, yo, we need to sit and talk about this. And I was
Right.
just so surprised as to like why men in general don't like that. It's in couples counseling.
Yeah.
Don't like the idea of counseling. What do you think is the biggest thing in the couple in the dynamic of couples that holds some men back?
And I think it's having to dip their toe in the whole world of emotions. You know, they're not comfortable talking about their emotions because, as we said earlier, that requires vulnerability. They can sometimes see it as a signal of weakness. You know, and I don't. And sometimes they just don't want to go there. They're fearful of what talking about their emotions might unveil to them about themselves. It's just a frightening, it's really just scary to think they don't move well and navigate in the world of emotions, you know. It's a foreign land. Let's call
Yeah.
it, you know. It's a foreign land and it's fraught with being exposed, you know, being exposed in some way. And men don't deal with that lack of control, that feeling of lack of control of what's going to happen, um, very well. That would be, I think that would be one of the main reasons, you know?
Yeah, and it's so funny because I think a lot of times vulnerability is there's a power in vulnerability, but I can understand for men why it's kind of like because a lot of times I'm not saying a lot of times, but there have been cases or sometimes when you're vulnerable with the wrong person
Of course.
who uses your vulnerability against you. And I think
Right.
so for a lot of men have had, I'm pretty sure a lot of men have had something like that, where they're like, you know what, let me be vulnerable with you. And then they just see the person become a completely different person, or down the line, they just use that to attack, and you're like, oh Lord, this is not a safe space. I can't afford to be vulnerable with this person.
Yeah.
And I think
But
it,
also, no, please continue. Sorry,
and
Stephen.
I think it just leads to like why so many men are like, man, I need to kind of be careful, or sometimes not even not wanting to go through the process. But sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I think also there is so that is a situation where a bad experience is now dictating how I move forward, you know. But I think that sometimes too, it's peer pressure. So it's witnessing your fellow colleagues starting to be vulnerable with their guy friends, and they're kind of there's a bit of a mocking sort of a thing. The joke, they can't take it seriously. There's joking around sort of a thing, and so witnessing that, and then there's the influence of the crowd and the connections and the peers that, you know, you don't even have to have a negative experience necessarily, but you get the message that if you if you are vulnerable, you're probably going to be subject to a bit of
Yeah,
scrutiny.
abuse. Yeah. It's funny, because I remember. I always remember this story because it's so. I remember one time, right? In high school, I went to all boys school. I went to Calabar. Man, them rough enough. Man, them will, you get played. But I remember one time in first form, there was a guy that soiled himself. Like, and it was that is
Was
one of
frightened. He had been frightened or something.
no
So
man. To be honest with you, it was kind of like they were having a poop. You know, your first form, but them having a pooping competition.
yes, 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 yes,
And apparently him a join along, but him force it too much and
yes.
soil himself. And I remember the whole block smelt it. So embarrassing. Yo, so this is first form, So in boys' school, you see once you have a card, once them card you with a nickname, it's stuck with you for the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Even when after you left, until you kind of like, yo, don't call me that.
Of
So
course.
the next day, listen to me, the next day him show up. I say every man literally just pretend like it never happened.
Oh, I didn't see that coming, Stephen.
Literally, like them see him and them say, you seen that, and every man just said, no. Because it was so embarrassing. The man was just like, no.
Oh, that's compassion.
And yeah, and no one spoke about it. Like for the rest of the fifth, like to the fifth form, like we literally just block it out.
Wow.
So it was just kind of like I remember some. As rough as men can be, trust me, like there still is that empathy and compassion. You know what I mean? Man, them not gonna just like lick you and carry you. So there is empathy and compassion amongst men, even in because that was first form. Like I remember that. I remember it. Fresh as day was first form. Literally,
No,
like once you had
fair
that
to
card.
say. I wonder, is it fair to say though that it stands out in your memory because it violated a norm that you had experienced?
Yeah, man. Normally, yeah. I remember I had a friend called Andrew. Andrew did have like a keloid skin on him lip. So he had like an extra roll of lip, like skin on him lip. So the man
Yeah.
them used to call him Lipocrite, Lipopotamus. You know what I mean? Like, like just
And on
fling
and
on.
on and on and on
On and
it.
on and on and on. I mean, sometimes we used to fight it, and then sometimes we just say, all right, cool, you can't really fight it. But yeah, that was just a boy school thing. But that situation was just so different,
Of
but
course.
so like, I was like, wow, that is so kind.
Of
You know
course.
what I mean? It was so kind of everybody, and it wasn't even a spoken thing. It was just understood.
Understood. That's wonderful.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it was so beautiful. I was just like, wow. You know what I mean? So I always remember that because I'm like, boy, man, them have compassion when them know them have compassion. So, all right, what role does mental health play in terms of relationship satisfaction for men? Like in terms of with a man and a woman? Can I ask you? Okay, let me ask you this. In your practice, what is the main cause of friction in couples between the man and the woman?
May I answer that in two ways,
Okay,
please?
sure.
So, by the time, statistically, it is an international standard that typically the couples that do come for therapy, they come up to 7 years, typically around 7 years after they first have started having problems. Okay. So bear that in mind. So by the time couples come to my practice, I would say the number one challenge that they're having is infidelity. However, their problems 7 years before did not start.
The infidelity is the cause. There's
The
a source.
infidelity, no, the infidelity is why they've walked through my doors, but that's not where the problem started. The problem started when their sense of connection started to break down. Their sense, what we call their sense of friendship, started to break down. Life took over. They started to become kind of strangers to each other. They weren't sharing as much about themselves anymore. So that sense of connection had started to erode. They weren't dealing with they hadn't dealt with conflict well. And when conflict doesn't go well, it damages your friendship. It damages that sense of connection. It puts you in a place where you don't feel like this person is your ally anymore. They start to become your enemy, you know, and that's kind of like what you call it, like a domino effect, and sooner or later, people seek connection outside of their relationship.
Yeah,
So
I see kind of like the solace or peace.
absolutely. The connection that they once had in this very relationship, But the thing about it is, Stephen, is that if they both come in through my door, I take that as a number one sign that they both want to work on it. Okay. So it's almost like the discovery of the infidelity is is a wake-up call. It's that things have gone really badly. And so they're now both in a place where they want to rebuild a brand new relationship. And that's a great place for me to start with them.
Okay. How and that's a very difficult thing though, correct? Because is it like the rebuilding after the cheating? You know, like how many people are normally like, forgive me, I'm willing to work on it. Like the cheating grabs their attention because in some cases, I feel like, do you think I don't want to be like I feel like cheating is always it's an incredibly painful thing, especially in a marriage. You
For
know,
sure.
so like how does it like how is it not does it normally work? Like them coming to you has it normally worked?
Yes, I do have a high success rate, but and
Okay,
it's
wow.
it's it's because, as I said, the mechanisms that we offer are tried and true. Number one,
Okay.
I would say, here's what I like to say. I would say about 6 out of 10 relationships are able to reconcile and repair when they come to us. So that's about 60%. But I have 100% success in terms of people being able to communicate better.
Wow.
Mm,
100%. That's a
absolutely.
good.
And it's
Wow,
because
okay.
they all say that. They said these were the tools we needed all along. And there's 40% that say, boy, I wish we had this before, we wouldn't have gotten here. And I'm so sorry, we can't save this anymore. But 60% say these are great skills, just what we need. Yeah, let's use this and we can start a whole new relationship built on different terms.
What steps is normally for that in terms of are these like communication like steps, like different changes in communication or?
Sure. Well, that's number one, right?
Okay.
Because the main thing is that couples don't have important, there's 7 important conflict management skills that are a part of effective conflict management in a relationship, and very few people have those skills. I often say you don't come out of the womb with those skills, right? So that it often starts there. That's a building block. Number two, couples do not have the knowledge of how to maintain a friendship. Many people, they come together and they think that because we're friends, we'll organically remain friends. We don't have to do anything, or maybe we can go on a date night every now and then, and we'll stay friends. But it doesn't work like that. There are active steps to take to ensure that you remain. And when I say friends, have this sense of connection that this person is your ally, this person has your back, sort of a thing.
Man,
So
that
that's
is such
two.
a
Yeah,
such a it's just an interesting thing that because allyship is different than friendship to me. Having like someone that has your back is different than I feel like a friend, you know. So I didn't mean to cut you. Go ahead.
sure. I think a huge component of friendship is trusting that this person is thinking about my well-being, and that's what I mean by having. And also, when I say ally, what I mean is I have somebody who we are together dealing with the challenges that life throws at us. I have an ally walking with me through life to face whatever challenges that are external to us, but also there will be problems between us, but we will be allies against the problem that's coming up in our relationship as well. So that's the component of friendship that's called an allegiance or allies. But just rattling back, so those are important building blocks. Being able to have the knowledge and the skills to build your friendship, number one, and having this knowledge and skills to handle conflict that's going to come every single day. Those two things are often skills that they don't have, and one thing leads to another, and then they end up with infidelity, damaging their connection. So you said, does it work? Is there a protocol? Is there a set of steps that we take to help people who are trying to recover from infidelity? And the answer is yes. There's a very, very rigid protocol that we take couples through. It's called the attunement, attachment process. And the atonement process is where the individual, sometimes it's both of them who have been unfaithful, but it's a process of, how should I say, opening the shutters that were there. Because infidelity, the thing about infidelity is that it involves a lot of deception. Okay. And so there's a very rigid process that I take them through of opening all the doors of deception so that I don't feel like I'm in the dark about what happened anymore. Okay. So that's the atonement process. So it's it's openness about what happened, how I got here, how did I meet this other person, what was it about the other person, where did we go, all the things. So it's almost like I create a setting where one person is talking to their friend about what happened. Does that make sense? So that's and of course a way to apologize for the pain caused.
It's funny. It's kind of like when that girl is like telling, "Oh, I hate it. What happened to me at work?" And a lot of time it'll always be kind of like, "Oh, well, this is what you should do to fix it." Well, a lot of time we don't want to hear solutions. So just want to hear that you feel their emotions. Have you ever seen that commercial with a girl that has the nail in her head?
No.
So it's a joke. There's this commercial where the girl, she's like, I feel so congested. I don't know what to do. And the guy's like, you have that nail in your head. She's like, it's not about the nail. He's like, I know, but if you could just take that nail out. And it's not about the nail. I just want you to listen. And he's like, okay. Yeah, it's that, because I feel like a lot of, we're very much like problem solve oriented as men, and I feel like women are more, that like it's not just the discussing their feelings. They want empathy. They want you to feel like, oh, I get where you're coming from. I get how you feel. That's what I mean. So like, it's.
And the problem is that, anyway, we'll come but the problem with men offering solutions, the main problem with it is timing, right? Okay. Because if I come to you, Stephen, and I'm having this problem, typically, maybe I've been dealing with the problem for the whole day at work, let's say, or I may having a problem with my boss or my girlfriend for the last 3 weeks or whatever. And as soon as I come talk to you about it, Stephen, I don't even reach sentence 5, or within 5 minutes, you're telling me what the solution to my problem is. You haven't even. I mean, that's almost insulting here. I've been grappling with it. It's dismissive. Yeah, like I've been grappling with it for whatever. I haven't even finished telling you the story, and you're offering me a solution, sort of a thing. So that's one problem, And then always that, and so talking about external stresses, guess what? Has another protocol that I actually give to couples, right? And I teach men, and women are, as more and more women become self-reliant and are working, they adopt those attitudes too of problem solving, right? So that's a win that's changing a little bit, where typically women will want to solve the problem as well sometimes, right? When their partner comes home and they're talking about, well, this happened, and the woman will also say, what you need to do is X, Y, and Z as well, right? So it happens both ways. And one of the things I drill into the people that come to talk to me is, do not offer any advice until you hear the magic words.
What's that?
The magic words are, what do you think I should do? Until you hear that, just all you need to say is, rotted, that sound rough. Seriously? So what you do after that? That's empathy. Me can't believe you. What? Lord have mercy. Me can't believe. What? Lord Jesus, that would have hurt me too. That's empathy. Seeing the pain. Until you hear the magic words, I don't know what to do. What do you think? Zip it.
That's most of the times you kind of just want to give your unsolicited advice. So
and you have to be patient. And a lot of times, unsolicited advice is, Stephen, is about often judgment. I'm judging you, right? Okay, and impatience. Let's just deal with this and get it on with, kind of a thing, right? Empathy takes a lot more time. You know what I mean? Empathy is often too, has no judgment. Okay. you know. So it's often a longer process than if I just say, Lord, what you need to do is just, Lord, man, just tell the man and walk off of the job. Done. Let's move to the next problem, sort of a thing. You know what I mean?
That's so horrible. That's so annoying to hear when people do that.
Exactly. You know,
Yeah, yeah. It's funny though. So you think it comes from judgment when you're giving just unsolicited advice?
inadvertently. I mean, I don't set out to judge you.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have judged the situation, judged you, and come up with a solution.
So how would you normally fix something like that? I don't know if you can fix it, but how would
What
you
do you consider
communicate?
the problem to be?
No, in the
What
judgment
problem?
of telling the problem, telling the person like you're coming across as this is judgmental of you. You know,
Okay.
so here's the thing with conflicts too, especially when you're kind of like, this is what you're doing. It can lead to a back and forth that can be. How do you deal with conflicts without becoming defensive, especially in relationships as that?
Okay. So I'm glad you asked about defensiveness. So defensiveness is one of the communication mechanisms that falls into a category. So the therapeutic model that I offer to couples is called the Gottman method, right? And it was designed by a mathematician, John Gottman. And he through his studies, the data that he uncovered suggested that when two people are in a relationship and talking about something, there are four ways that are of interacting that are the most negative of all. And there was a direct correlation between these four ways of interacting and the end of your and relationship dissolution, they call it, right? And defensiveness is one of those four ways. Okay. So once you interact with your partner and there's defensiveness in your conversations more than, I think it's something like 87% of the time, right? If I happen to be defensive or use any of the other 3-4 mechanisms to talk to you, our relationship is going to end within 6 years.
Whoa.
Absolutely. Right? We may stay together, right? There's a high probability we're going to separate, or if we don't separate, there's going to be hardly any relationship.
Wait, could you repeat that one more time? I just want to get that again. Yeah.
Okay. So there are four negative ways. There are many negative ways of interacting with your partner, right? Particularly around conflict or stress.
Yeah.
Lots of negative ways. But of all the negative ways, there are 4 ways of interacting that are far more destructive or toxic than all the other negative ways put together. And they call those 4 things the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, how destructive they are, right? Gottman does. Now, if you use any of those 4 ways of communicating, which I'll tell you about them later, more than 87% of the time, your relationship is going to end within 6 to 7 years. There's a high probability. Sorry.
Okay. What are these for?
It's using criticism, and that's where I criticize you, your character, your personality. It's being defensive, which is where I take no responsibility whatsoever for the challenge that we're having. It's being contemptuous, which is where I kind of stand on high and put you down. I not only criticize you, but I put you down. I leave you feeling small. That's contempt. And then the 4th one is stonewalling. It's where I just tune you out. It's like, I'm not even engaging you anymore. I shut down. So those 4 ways are really, really, really destructive. But to come back to your question was, how do I help people who might have a defensive response to their partner? So the first thing I do is I give them that little bit of information I just gave you, and that gets their attention, just like it got yours, right?
Yeah.
And they take me seriously. So I tell them, listen, what you just did, I help them to identify when their response is defensive, and that has a very strict formula, right? I help them to identify when they're being defensive, and I give them what's called an antidote. Okay, so the antidote to defensiveness is listening carefully to what your partner says and trying to authentically take responsibility for something that you can take responsibility for. Okay, and then asking more questions of your partner to understand where they're coming from rather than defending yourself. No, I didn't do that. I don't know what you're talking about. That's just going to escalate the conversation. You know what I mean? So instead of saying that if you can take responsibility for something, for even part of what is being said, and usually there is something, you have a role.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You can acknowledge your role first and then try to understand the impact of what is happening on your partner. That is a solution, or that's one of the conflict management skills that will help you to kind of leverage conflict into intimacy rather than making conflict something that tears you apart.
Man. Wow. It's funny because there was something I was reading the other day, and it was a sermon, and he was saying that too in terms of um, to reconcile, in terms of being a peacemaker. A lot of it is, because a lot of us in reconciling, we normally wait for our partner to be the one that we wait for the person who feel wronged us to be the one to apologize. And
Yes.
a lot of it is actually us making the attempt and being like, and then even if it's 99.9% the other person's fault, finding that 0.1% and being like, you know what, I did this wrong.
Yes,
You know what I mean? I did that wrong. Just to kind of
for sure.
attempt to, level out and make peace. So it's
And once you do
fascinating.
that,
Sorry, go
and once
ahead.
you do that, once you do that, it's almost like it primes your partner to be more compassionate of you. It primes, it's vulnerable, so your partner is more willing to be vulnerable. It also primes your partner to better hear your side of what happened when your time comes to speak.
Yeah,
No?
yeah,
You've dropped the
yeah.
guard. You've
Yeah,
dropped
the
the
guy the
guard.
guy drops.
Exactly.
But
You've defanged them, as it were.
can I ask you something though about like what happen if like one partner wants to reconcile but the other partner is kind of like, yeah, this is done. Like
Yeah.
I'd rather just co-parent than
Yeah.
to reconcile. What would you do about that? Is it possible of bringing that person back? How does that work?
Um, Typically, I don't. No, it's important that both partners are on the same page. Sometimes what I will say is,
Even if the partner not cheat? I feel like cheating is when I understand somebody should leave. But if the partner is like trying and you're just like, no, it's kind of like,
yeah,
wow, really?
yeah, no, it's very so in the training that I went through for couples for this model of couples therapy, right? There are two times when I am not to give therapy to couples who come in through my door, right? Two times when it's ill-advised,
Okay.
right? Or as doctors say, counter-indicated, right? And that is one, if there's domestic violence, I am not to
Oh,
give couples therapy.
okay, yeah.
And to suggest that the perpetrator get help. Okay, because in couples therapy, it's going to create an atmosphere that will make the victim more vulnerable, okay, and will activate the perpetrator more. So, do not. But also the second situation in which you're not to give couples therapy, at least according to this model, is if one person or both are not committed to working on the relationship. It does
It doesn't work. It's pointless.
because if you come into couples therapy, it's work.
But I mean, the person wants to work. They just don't want to. They'd rather co-parent. It's a specific example.
They want to co-parent, meaning they're not interested in this having an intimate relationship, partnership with this person anymore. They just want to co-parent,
Yeah, which
right?
to me is like, man, I don't know, because I feel like once children are involved, it's like, man, that's a completely, you know what I mean?
Well, that's
It's
the
just,
value that you have, Stephen, but that's not necessarily a value. Some people feel like they can be a better parent as a co-parent rather than as a partner to this particular person.
why that rough? That's a very rough. Yeah, it's a very very rough thing.
The most I will say in those situations, you see, is that sometimes the the person who is not committed to working on the relationship, they have gotten there because there have been a series of hurts, right? And sometimes I will say, listen, maybe what we can do is, would you permit me to give you better conflict management skills, number one? And then can we use those skills to process some of the hurts that have passed?
I know so many men that refuse to do couples therapy, and I kind of wanted this episode to kind of show that there's a safety in it. You know, for men to watch this and be like, oh, okay, so couples therapy is really not that harmful. It's a serious thing. I've seen marriages fall apart because the men were too prideful to do the therapy. And it wasn't even no major issue. Like no cheat like to me cheating is kinda like the faux pas. Like you know what I mean? I feel like once you head down there so divorce and them thing there is understandable. So if cheating now one and you just don't want the counseling, it's to me it's kinda like what? You know what I mean? Like I feel like any relationship can be fixed. You know? I don't believe in when people say irreconcilable differences, I don't believe in that.
Yes.
Unless it's cheating or domestic abuse. Then it's irreconcilable.
Yes.
But
But
most of the time it's not the case.
yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
You know? And I've seen some couples like head to divorce and you're like, why them divorce? And it's just kinda a disagreement. And I'm like, disagreement? Man not cheat? And it's just disagreement lead to divorce? Is either, I don't want to judge. But it's like, how to get into marriage? How to get in there? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because I try not to make comments because I'm a serial, like, single person. I've been single I've been in relationships, but I'm not like, some people are serial daters. I don't
Yes.
know how, but I'm the opposite. So I'm
Yeah.
always just kind of like, well, I really can't comment. But I'm very much surprised when you hear divorce and everything there. In a marriage where nobody not cheat, there's some disagreements that nobody wanted to kind of compromise on.
But you know what, though, Stephen? Here's the thing. Um, Cheating is about betrayal, but it's strange, you can have betrayal can take many forms.
Okay. In what way? What do you mean?
Um, Meaning, I guess, let me see if I can give you an example. Um, we got into this relationship and you um committed to me that we were, I don't know, I'll use language such as we were in this together, that we would be able to, let me see if I can find one, pursue our dreams together, and I would be able to self-actualize as well. Now we're here and you're telling me, no, I have to give up my dreams, I have to give up my career. That's not what I signed up for. This, where did this come from? Sort of a thing. That's a bit of a betrayal because that's not what we discussed. Those were not explicit expectations. It's not what I want anymore. And so it's almost like the deal has changed and it's not, it's without my permission to do so.
Okay. Yeah. I get you.
I got into this relationship. I thought that I was, we were going to make decisions that were in both our interests. We would both participate in decisions together. And your mother has moved in.
Oh
She has
gosh.
taken over, and also, and you are no longer my allies. Like I am now the odd man out here, for instance. I'm pulling at things, but
No, man, but that is a thing, man. When the parents, because you're not marrying just the person, you're marrying the family as well. So when the parents get
but
involved.
also, the parents getting involved is not a kiss of death. It's that how the couple deal with it that can, you know what I mean? If you I've had couples where it's, I'm told the week before that my parents have to move in. Sure, your parents don't have a choice, but do we get to discuss it? Does, am I not an equal member of this partnership? Or,
Man.
it's like,
Yeah.
sure, I'll probably accept them moving in, but could I at least be consulted,
Yeah.
And then they are living with us, and suddenly I have no power in my own home anymore, for example. Or, my father-in-law or my mother-in-law is criticizing how I deal with the kids, and you are not
Yeah. You're
support
not
me.
defending, yeah.
Absolutely. Or, that's a betrayal too, um, things like that, you know what I mean?
Wow. No man, that is because boy, I've seen that now. As like the more, yeah, I've seen that where.
Even this one, I've been rifling through my memory trying to think of one. Even something as simple as, you treated me one way
Hmm.
when we were courting and
Oh,
engaged.
oh
Now
yeah.
we move in, and
Yes.
the way you talk to me is
Yeah, man.
disrespectful. The
Yep.
way it's tantamount to emotional abuse. That's
Hmm.
a betrayal. That's not,
Yeah. But
you treat.
that's enough, man. That happens still, because a lot of men love the chase. You know what I mean? We love the chase, and in the chase, we're kind of putting this person. I don't want to say on a pedestal, but we're kind of projecting certain things onto that person. So once we get them, you know what I mean? And also, to be honest with you, this is kind of a controversial take on my part, but I think dating, a lot of times people put their best selves on when they're dating. You know what I mean? It's a performance. That's why it's kind of like, some guy know for interview well but can't keep the job. Some man have some very good data because them know for woo the girl for the first, I'd say couple weeks. And once them, you know what I mean? Once, it's not a matter of, oh, them get what them want so them lose interest. It's not that, it's kind of like, boy, I cannot keep up who I've probably put in this girl's head as to who I am. So I'd rather sabotage this relationship or silently get myself out of this because I know I cannot live up to the expectations I've given this person.
Mhm.
Some people would call that love bombing, which I don't really believe in love bombing. I don't know if you've heard these terms before. These are like huge terms in the Twitter sphere now. Love bombing. Everybody's dating a narcissist now, and everybody's being love bombed. Can I ask, what are your thoughts on that? Where all of a sudden every girl says their ex was a narcissist. Do you feel like that term is being overused, or do you believe it's valid?
Because narcissism is a clinical diagnosis, Stephen, right? And which means that you have to satisfy certain behaviors, a list of behaviors, as what we call a syndrome of behaviors, to be clinically diagnosed as narcissistic. And I mean, last I checked, it was something like, is it 3% of adult males and 2.5% of adult females are narcissistic. I have that clinical
Wait,
diagnosis.
sorry, what's the number? One more time. Can I hear the number?
Like, I want to double check. It's in the DSM. I think it's something like 3%.
3%.
Yeah. Please don't hold me to that. I'm gonna do a little bit more.
No, I'll wait until you find it because, to be honest, whenever someone tells me their ex was a narcissist, my eyes roll. I'm just like, he was not.
Chances
It's
are, they're not. Um, I think, but it's a word that has a clinical medical definition that has kind of bled into casual conversations, Um, most often when people say, I was with a narcissist, it means that I didn't feel seen, I felt the person was selfish, they invalidated me, blah blah blah, and all of those things can be true. The person was always more concerned about themselves, far more self-centered than me. I felt like an observer in the relationship. Whatever, the person seldom put me before them. Whenever we having a conversation, I could never share myself with them because they would always overtake with their own
and
concerns.
make it about them. Yeah.
Exactly. And all of those things can be true and have nothing to do with narcissism. you know.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to sound, Stephen, I don't want to sound as if I am plugging the different services that I offer. However, would you please permit me to say
No.
that one of the wonderful things that the Gottman Institute has trained us, their psychologists, to do is offer a number of workshops, right? I haven't done it in Jamaica as yet, but one of
Okay.
the wonderful workshops that Gottman has given me a franchise to do, and again, it's based on statistical, it's evidence based, it's based on research, is something called seven principles of effective dating. And what that workshop really takes you through is how to really get to know somebody. And it's and it's wonderful in that, in by asking these set of questions, playing these kind of games, sort of a thing, you're getting to know the person. And a lot of times too, through those conversations, the person is getting to know themselves as well, because a number of the questions they never even thought to ask themselves, quite frankly. So there is what we call self-intimacy developing, and self-intimacy is where you get to know yourself better. And then also couples intimacy, where the other person is getting to know you better as well, you know. And also the workshop also includes giving you the anatomy of a relationship. So a lot of the things you and I are talking about, telling people who are single that, listen, here are some important skills you want to have under your belt when you meet this other person. You know, when you invite somebody into your life, these are great skills to have, to be able to express your needs in a successful way, to express your disappointments, your hurts, in a way that the other person can hear, and that you can repair and move forward in a different way. You know, all of these skills, just to help you in the dating process, in the getting to know the person. And then also, once you decide to engage in a relationship, here are some great skills to make that a much more rewarding experience.
That's a workshop you offer at Tea House,
Yeah.
sorry.
I haven't
Okay.
done it yet, but I've been trained to do it.
That's a very interesting workshop. That's the name
Absolutely
itself.
wonderful.
Could you repeat the name?
Seven principles of effective dating.
Seven Principles of Effective Dating. That sounds like a book.
Yeah, yeah. He's made, yeah, he has Gottman has condensed it into a book, which is a workbook for the
Yeah.
workshop and so on. But it's so interesting. It
It's
is so fascinating.
is it like those psychological games like the Cube? There's this game I used to play back in the day called the Cube. I used to love doing it, but like well, in my 20s, I used to love that game. So like I'd travel a lot. So it was just
But
always when you had like the Cube, then you had like the strawberry field, and then you had like this one about like walking in the woods, and then you see a house. And you know, and like how your subconscious reacts to the imagery says a lot about you. Is it stuff like that? Is it like
no,
games
it's
like
not.
that?
No, it's not as how should I say, conceptual as that. It's more, let me give you an idea. It's certain, and it's not only about getting to know, it's about more than that. But anyway, but the getting to know part would include things such as, um, how was anger handled in your home? When somebody was angry, how was it handled? And so how do you handle it when you're angry now? For example, do you know? Do you know when you're angry? And what happens? You know, how do you express your anger typically? Do you just shut down? Do you become dysregulated? What happens? And that causes you to introspect. What's some of your greatest disappointments in your life, kind of thing,
Wow, that's some job
And then,
interview question.
huh?
If somebody asked me that on a date, I'd be like, yo, this sound like an interview. Where is this going?
It's a
Yeah,
it's for a dialogue, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
When
yeah.
I
Wow.
used to go to Stephen, I used to go to bridal shows, right? And my booth was about getting couples to do therapy before they get married, right? Because therapy before you get married is 5 times as effective in saving your relationship than when you start therapy after you start having the problems,
Yeah,
right?
pre-couples
But
counseling, yeah.
Exactly. So I used to go to these bridal shows to get people to think about it, and I'm there telling them, you're thinking about the wedding day. I beg you, think about the marriage, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we make an investment in the marriage here as well as in the dress. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Say yes to the dress and say yes to the
So
marriage too.
marriage comes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I remember, and so I would have all my games and my questions and the different tools at my at my um at my
Disposal.
booth, And I remember this couple came up and they were actually a visiting couple. They were from overseas, right? And they were engaged. And they came up and they were like, tell me about these games. So I said, okay, here's a game that we call Love Maps, right? And Love Map is about learning about your partner's emotional world, almost as if it's a map that you're filling in the contours of the map. And the map is telling you about your partner's internal emotional world. And you're able to fill in the details on the map by asking these questions. So the female says, we've been engaged for 3 years. I know him so well. So I said, well, okay, why don't you play the game with me? And I start shuffling my cards, right? She didn't see me coming. So I start shuffling my cards. And she chooses a card and it says, what is your partner's biggest disappointment? That's what I thought of it. What's your partner's biggest disappointment?
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that is. It's when you were in high school and you were playing football and you broke your foot and you couldn't play anymore. Isn't that your biggest disappointment? And he said, nope. It was when I broke my foot. It was set and one foot is slightly short. One leg
It's shorter than the
is
other.
shorter than the other. And so when I went to join the Navy, I was declined. And that was the biggest I always wanted. My life story was about joining the Navy. I was declined and I was depressed for several years because my life dream was denied me. And she's like, and then she says, what? You wanted to join the Navy? You never told me that. How come you never told me? And he says, well, I never got to join, so it never came up. I never thought about it. And Stephen, the both of them, it's like I disappeared. They started talking about it, and the conversation just took off right there in front of my booth, and I just stood in amazement as they both were learning new and profound things, and he went on to say, it just undermined my confidence. And guess what? When I went on that date and I was talking about this is really my confidence, and on and on they went for it, so that's an example of the getting to know.
That's a real. So it's like in cards. Is it like a card game?
Yeah, I have it. Well, we have it in card games, but also it's now digital as well. So the cards are now digital. So I give the couples.
That's so fun. That sounds so fun though. Like, what I mean? You have those card games you can play when you have games night.
Exactly.
That sounds like such a good thing to play for games night. That's really wow.
But the point is, though, what I always emphasize is I'm giving you a game to play so that you can cultivate a habit. Make no mistake, this is not just about fun. It's the more you play it, the more you'll spontaneously have the tools to always be inquiring and paying attention to your partner. Because guess what, Stephen? That on that day, his biggest disappointment might have been being denied the army. But as they come together and they grow through life, you better believe that answer to that question is going to change. He's a changing person. She's a changing person. And what happens to couples is that they're changing and they're not sending each other the memo. Right? So what I say to them, this is a game that you become spontaneous with in your partner. You have to realize that you will always be getting to know your partner. Right? Your partner is a dynamic force. So you have to pay attention. Notice when something is different. Ask questions, right? Never assume that you know everything about your partner. Always, because one of the things in the research that Gottman discovered is that the couples that were most satisfied in their relationship, right, were those couples who had a sense of curiosity about their partner. And they were always saying, so really, this happened to you today. How did that affect how you feel about your career at this place, for example? You know what I mean? 6 months ago, they might have been very excited about their career, but now it's changing, and that their partner is attuned to these potential changes and interested and probing was a wonderful skill that really kept them with that sense of connection and
So,
feeling.
so you think normally when you bring a couple in, do you like can you recognize, oh, this relationship will probably be good because of the dynamic in terms of the one of the partners having that curiosity? Do you
I'm
pick up
so
on stuff like that?
glad you asked that question. So when couples come in to Tea House, the first thing that they do is what's called a relationship assessment. And it's actually
Okay.
done for me by the Gottman Institute. So I sign them up, and the Gottman Institute sends them a long questionnaire. The questionnaire has about 350 questions.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. And if they answer it, they don't consult, no consulting allowed, but they answer all of those questions. And then the Gottman Institute, they integrate their answers, and they're able to give a measure, a reading on how much they know about each other, how connected they feel, what is the status of their friendship. The relationship the assessment can tell you all the conflict management skills that they don't have or that they do have, which skills they're good at and which skills they're not good at. So it gives me a diagnostic, as it were, that says, Sonia, get them to learn these 4 conflict management skills because they don't have it, and their relationship is going to end if they don't get those skills. Also, their love maps is faulty. Give them the skills, teach them how important that is. Also, there's a trust factor here. One person is worried, their trust is compromised. Take them through this conversation so that they can start the process of rebuilding. So rebuilding trust. So my answer to your question is, when couples come in to me, I don't have to guess. They do a diagnostic test that tells me what the strengths of the relationship is and what the challenges are, so that the challenges that we then build into the therapy, into the premarital, so that their relationship is made robust. It's standing strong as they enter into life together. And that's true for couples that are getting married, the premarital phase, but also it's even more powerful for couples who are in crisis.
Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah. I say it definitely sounds like it's a healthy approach. For what for
Guess
them
what?
to
Oh, wait, there's more. Guess what?
okay. All right.
What's wonderful about that process is that when couples come in, since we're talking about men, when couples come in and I start to tell them, listen, I don't have any judgment to make about the relationship. I know you're in crisis. I know there's been infidelity, but let's figure out why that happened. Could you do this assessment for me? I'm going to sign you up with the institute. Off you go do the assessment. The men immediately feel more confident about the process because they feel it's removed from me. A lot of times when men come in, they worry that I'm going to automatically side with the
With the
female.
woman. Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And the mere fact that I said, nope, I don't have any judgment to pass. I just want a diagnostic report that tells me which skills you need to work on. Immediately the men say, yes, okay, sign me up. That's what I want, kind of a thing, you know what I mean? Because it's dispassionate,
Yeah.
you know,
It's logical.
it's
Yeah.
exactly. So that's one of the wonderful things that win the men over.
Can I ask you, how often is finances a part of conflict in in the couples that you've counseled?
Um, Let me put it this way. I would have to look. Let me see if I can guess. If I were to guess, and they do evaluate that, is finances an issue, right? Um, I would say it comes up pretty often. However, how Gottman treats it is that what's more important is that this couple doesn't know how to handle conflict. So finances is one thing that's presenting a conflict in their relationship, and they don't have the conflict management skills to handle it. Does that make sense?
But what about like if spending, because like what if like somebody has a spending problem? or they do not deal with their finances properly. You know what I mean? I think a lot of, that happens a lot. You know what I mean? And it's not like a red flag for a lot of people.
Yeah,
That's why I ask. You know
for
what I
sure.
mean? So
Yes.
go ahead.
How they think about it is that the fact that you spend in a certain way and I spend in a different way, that's a source of conflict, right? The problem is the differences in our approach, put it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we need effective communication skills to talk to each other about that so that I can understand where is this coming from? What's your approach? A lot of times too, the difference, what causes the source of conflict around money and finances is this one. Quite often, it's that for one person, the meaning of money is different from the meaning for the other person, in that the meaning for money has a meaning of security for one person. And by that, I mean, money makes me feel secure about my future, in that, I'm not going to be homeless.
Yeah.
If I have medical bills, in the future, I can pay for them.
Yeah.
So money signifies security for one person. Whereas for the other person, money signifies an improvement in the quality of my life. So in other words, for the other person, it is, listen,
Floss. It's an excuse for floss. And it's an excuse for breath and travel and.
yeah, I want to live in a house that has a generator for when light gone. And that is important to me because I grew up in a place where I had to be living with a tilly light, and I worked too hard and I got to school and sweat too much. The kerosene lamp business, no, that done. I'm earning, I'm living, I'm working this hard so that I can pay for quality of life that I was denied in my childhood or whatever. You know what I mean? So money signifies an improvement in the quality of my life today. Does that make sense? It's not that,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, a
right?
lot of
And
us have
so
different
those,
perspectives on money. Yeah.
exactly. And so sometimes it's that, a lot of times actually, it's that different, and those differences in philosophy will then result in a difference in habits. Okay. So a lot of times couples are busy clashing over the habits, but they don't have the skills to have the conversation about the philosophy that is supporting those habits.
Okay. What about how about in terms of the woman feeling the man isn't leading well enough? Have you ever seen that? Where the man is not manning up as some people some people would say.
I'm just going through the report in my head in terms of where that would fall.
So is it finances and communication the main? Okay, I don't want to say what is the main conflict in your years? What do you see is the main thing? Communication?
No, well, the whole thing is about communication, to tell you the truth, right? You maintain your friendship through effective communication. You manage conflict through effective communication. You plan your future through effective communication, right? So the main thing is about communication. You're vulnerable through how you communicate, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the whole thing is about communication, right? Number one. And then we become aware of our how should I say, our deficiencies in communication by the stressors that are thrown at us. Like we have a difference in money problems, for example. It's creating a crisis, a conflict, and we don't have the skills to talk about it effectively so that we can unravel it together. You know what I mean? We have a difference in parenting styles. But we don't have the skills to talk about it and our expectations, our needs in an effective way without attacking our partner or making our partner feel bad, or without managing the emotions that come up when we're talking about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
There are sources that create conflict. Money is one, parenting is one, in-laws is another, sex is another, spending quality time together is another. Independence versus interdependence is another. So there are different stressors, let's say,
Yeah.
that come at the couple, and they don't have the skills to manage it, to talk it through, negotiate it with each other. Um,
Sex
and
is sex a big one? Sex is a big
oh,
one.
for sure, of course, sex is a big one. And often it has to do with differences in libido is a big one. Um, differences in sexual needs, sexual orientation, differences in sexual styles, that sort of a thing.
I feel like libido is tied to the other things. Because I feel like if you feel like the person is meeting your other needs, well, I don't know. Wouldn't you want more of that person? You know what I mean?
No, not necessarily, not at all. Because guess what? Guess what? Like money, sex is iconic. It has different meanings for different people. A lot of times, and people's history of sex, you know, um, affects how they show up in their relationship. I'm going to give you an extreme example. So, for example, if one person has experienced sexual assault,
Oof. Okay.
for example, I'm just giving you an extreme example, right? Then that's going to have an impact for a while. I mean, I could feel connected to you so till the cows come home. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
The truth is that my sexual history is going to show up um, in my present day sexual life. So
Yeah.
that's one example. You know what I mean? The whole matter of shame. For people who grew up in families where
Religious also, yeah.
shame, right, a lot of shame around sex, that has implications as well in
That's
in
funny, no, because yeah, I can definitely understand that. Okay, what are some practical steps men can take to support their partner's mental health, or let's just say in general for each other to support their partner's mental health?
Yeah. Okay. I would say one of the main things is creating space for important sharing, sharing of emotions, sharing of stressors, a lot of time our mental health suffers because we're dealing with stressors, not only in the relationship, but outside the relationship. So if a man or a woman can create a safe, non-judgmental space where their partner can just talk about the stresses, talk about what they're going through, talk about their emotional life, talk about, their frailties and fragilities and vulnerabilities on a day-to-day basis. As well as their dreams and their aspirations, as well as their failures, as well as their successes, creating a safe space where they're number one, paying attention, you know, to what the partner is sharing. And number two, not judging, but empathizing. I think that's a major contributor to mental health of both parties in a relationship. Also, just, cultivating a lifestyle that is conducive to mental health. So making sure you you have a healthy lifestyle that, the big three: sleep, eat, diet, sleep, diet, exercise, and,
Yeah.
making sure that, I mean, I can't tell you how many couples they don't support each other when one person is trying to live a certain way. Then a lot of times their partner is undermining it, either deliberately or inadvertently.
As like as a joke type of thing. Because I remember,
Exactly.
yes,
Oh, just
yeah.
have the ice cream. Now forget Lord, man. Or you have to go running again. Can't, I blah blah blah. You don't have time for that right now. I need you to be doing whatever. You know what I mean? And so um, it's not a supportive environment for a healthy lifestyle necessarily, I would say.
It's
Um,
funny. I was reading an article on it and it was saying that people a lot of times, let's say like a major thing of like losing weight. And the story was that a lot of people when they lost their weight, they lost a lot of friends and they broke up with their partner. Because a lot of their friends wanted them to stay fat or stay in the state they were so that they could feel better about their own selves.
oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I mean. So it's always funny when we think about like, oh, when someone is making a dramatic change in their life, and people a lot of times people who see them in a certain way, they may mean well, but there is an underlying thing of stay in a certain place so I don't feel bad
Although,
about my own
Stephen,
shortcomings.
would you permit me to be a little bit nerdy, a little bit, please? So I
Yeah.
think I think when we read these things, it's always very important to have a sense of the statistical information supporting that, because it may be true that people who lost weight lost friends, but if it is 2% of people who lost 2% of all the people who lost weight also lost friends, then it's not even worth talking about, put it that way. But if it's 70% of people who lost weight also lost friends, then that's a phenomenon that's worth exploration and, do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Something came to me and I wanted to ask you this. In terms of how do you feel about like confidence in dating, not couples, but dating. That is before you get to the couple stage. In terms of men struggling with their confidence in dating. Because, all right, I'm gonna give you this is not even an example. This is an interpretation of me, and you can challenge it. I think a lot of times when men are struggling with their confidence, or like even their depression and that type of stuff, it's not really in dating, it's not really a safe space. I think a lot of times the woman would want the man to more come prepared, as in deal with his issues first before dating, before going through the process of dating. And I feel like women kind of have it easier in terms of a woman can be going through a lot of self-esteem issues and stuff, but she will still have that room for dating. Like a guy will still date her. Well, and a man will date her and realize, oh, that girl, I kind of have, she have some self-esteem stuff, but it's not like a deal breaker. But a man that lacks confidence or is going through that type of like confidence stuff, he won't have I would say he wouldn't even have to get to that stage of dating with a woman. You know what I mean? Because men are normally the initiators. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or
Yes. Okay. I think I agree with you that culturally men are the pursuers. That's true. And so if a man's self-confidence impairs his ability to pursue, that is going to impair his ability to have to
healthy
start,
relationship.
you know what I mean? But again, that's a wave that's changing, Stephen.
Okay.
I mean, not every woman is sitting back and waiting for the man to make the first move. That's
I
a
don't.
wave that's changing.
I mean, I would say I agree, but I would say a woman's definition of approaching and shooting her shot is not the same as a guy. A woman will shoot her shot by coming, like standing in front of him or being in his periphery and still waiting for him to approach. I'm not saying all women. I'm just saying it's very rare that you run into a woman that's super aggressive and like, oh, I do not see that.
Well, what I'm saying is that is changing. It was rare. It's less and less rare in that a woman, if she's in there are more women. They're not the majority.
Okay.
There's a huge minority who will be in a space. And if she is attracted to a man and he's not making a move, she will make a move. That is changing, let me tell you. Slowly, but as women become more self-sufficient, right? As women become major breadwinners for themselves, as women no longer have to depend on men as breadwinners, that is trickling into how men and women relate to each other as well.
Do you feel? Sorry, go ahead.
In dating, in marriages, in relationships, it's having an effect.
But I feel like, okay, do you feel like women would earn more, but they would still kind of expect the man to be the provider type of role?
But that's changing. I mean, the statistics of men who stay home with the children. Stephen, have you seen them? They're changing.
I mean, it has, but
out and are the sole breadwinner.
But I feel like, man, that just leads to resentment, though. Like, I've seen it lead to resentment where the woman resents the man, where she feels like. So there's nothing wrong with the guy staying home, I think the issue is that sometimes men still won't lead. So you can stay home and still lead as a man in the house and in the relationships. But I've just seen women earn more than the guy and still kind of there's like a resentment, like you're not pulling your weight, you're not being a man.
There are relationships where that happens and it suffers for that reason. There are also successful relationships where both people make that decision and stick it out.
I
And
agree.
in the
I agree.
same way, there are relationships where men are the major breadwinner and there's resentment for something else.
Yeah, yeah. Where it feels like he's providing all of this and she's not giving that much back in return or something like that.
Exactly. Or she feels that simply because I'm not a breadwinner, you think that I don't have any say
Or
in,
any input.
right? So that dynamic can play out in many different ways.
No, facts,
They are not
absolutely.
gender related, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the major point I want to make is that it's a attitudes are changing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Attitudes are changing, perhaps slowly, but nonetheless, you know, the way men and women relate and expectations are.
But
Always, this is very, very anecdotal, but I always remember I lived in Barbados for a little while and I had a close friend where the wife was an attorney and the husband, they had made a decision that he would stay home.
okay.
And I remember once I went to pick her up, and he was an active stay-at-home dad. Let me tell you.
Okay.
And I've never met a man more confident. I went to their house one evening to pick her up. And he had all his buddies over and they were watching a cricket match on the TV, kind of a thing, right? Him and his guy friends, right?
Yeah.
And she walks out to come with me, and he says, "Where are you going with your skirt look like that? Just take it off, let me iron it for you." Right? And she takes off the skirt, Stephen, and in front of everybody, he's ironing her skirt and watching the cricket, and they're talking as if no, and I'm just thinking to myself, that would have never happened in a Jamaica. But it's like nobody miss a beat. She take off the skirt, he's ironing it, him move the ironing board out to the living room, He now mixing the game, he's ironing the skirt, he watching his cricket, the guys are watching the cricket, nobody's putting any comment.
Nobody said nothing. I don't know.
Nobody said anything. And I just think, okay.
No, sir. No, I can't say that. We can't say that in Jamaica. Take off the skirt, let me iron it for you. What? Are they still together?
Absolutely. It's a relationship that works.
Works. Yeah, it works. It works for them. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Once it works for them, you can't really, you can't say nothing. It worked for them. It worked for them. So, okay, if a man is dealing with if somebody, let's say somebody in a relationship is dealing with mental health issues, do you recommend that they stay in the relationship or take some time off, work on themselves, and come back? You saw Bridgerton? You watch Bridgerton?
Yes, I did.
You watch one with Queen Charlotte with the guy and he has like the mental health issues and she stays with him. I was like, man, I don't know, man. That's a wild.
By the way, just out of interest. Anyway, this is not so important, but I mean, when you do the actual research into history, two interesting things.
Okay.
I think he reigned for a long time, and it was the final years of his reign. So I'm so sorry, Stephen. So like I think he reigned for, let's say, 20 years or something like that, and like it was the last 4 or 5 years that he was actually had mental health issues.
Had mental health issues.
But I mean, the way the movie predicts it, it was like from the beginning of their
beginning, which I was like, I don't know no girl I was gonna like.
And then
he is king. So some girls might be like, yo, let me just, you know what I mean? But yeah.
But mental health, let's see. I would say, it's if you want your marriage to continue, right? If you're invested in the marriage, then there's no go and work on yourself and come back. That's probably not going to work. You have a better chance of success if you have the support of your partner whilst you're working on your mental health issues. But you have to get help to work on your mental health issues. You know what I mean? But if they separate whilst one person is working on their mental health issues, the chances that the relationship comes back after the person has had successful treatment is low.
Wow. Yeah. It's because the minute somebody says, "Yo, let me work on myself. I'm going through stuff." I was like, "Yo, man, everybody going through stuff, dog." Like, it's a cop
Also,
out.
but
Yeah.
also, but also, we were partners. Wait a second. We signed up for richer for poorer and now that in sickness and in health, and now that the sickness part is what's the point of the partnership then? If you're gonna go through crisis on your own, then why? You know what I mean?
Yeah. By the way, do difference in religion does that affect how the relationship lasts? Like if someone's an atheist and he marries a Christian or stuff like that, or someone's a Muslim that marries an atheist, or Muslim marrying a Christian. That's not that popular in Jamaica, but I know a lot of people that Muslims that marry Christians. It's just always an interesting dynamic to me. But does that have you seen that in terms of
I have
differences?
what I have dealt with is two people from different denominations,
Mm-hmm.
and for some, and both are very devout,
Mm-hmm.
and that has posed a challenge, particularly, but which we've tried to deal with in like premarital counseling. They have
Yeah.
just said, we know this is going to be a problem. We need your help to negotiate it, because there's a question of how we're going to bring up our children, how we're going to spend Sunday mornings, are we going to, are we going to go our separate ways? Will we go together? And that can be pretty painful. But for some people, it works as well. I think a lot depends on how devout you are in your faith, because sometimes for some of us, it's important that we obey the letter of the law,
Yeah.
and we are not unequally yoked. For other people, we have more orthodoxy in terms of we can be more flexible in how we interpret our doctrine, and there's more flexibility in how we negotiate our relationships. So I think it depends on how the individual intersects with their faith. Does that,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Hold on, one last question. What are some resources or tools you recommend for men looking to improve their mental health in as well as their relationships?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I would say there's a lot of reading material out there, Um, for men, the 7 principles of making relationships work.
That's a very good one.
Gottman wrote one called the 7 principles of making marriage work, but it can apply to any intimate relationship. Doesn't have to be marriage.
Okay.
One of the things in terms of emotional intelligence and kind of knowing and having a vocabulary for emotions,
Yeah.
and knowing what they are, there are 2 really great books. Brené Brown.
Hey, I love her.
Yeah, that book that she wrote called Atlas of the Heart is a really fantastic book. It's written with a lot of humor and insight, but it describes in detail something like 7, how many again? Let me look it up. A number of emotions, but it tells you when you're feeling the emotions, what setting it feels, and how the emotion can help you to be more successful and emotionally resilient,
Okay.
That's a great book. Let's see. So okay, but I'll come back to that. But so there's good reading material out there to help you navigate relationships, to help you to know yourself better and how to navigate emotions, difficult emotions. They're important, I would say, mindfulness apps, for example, that can help you really to moderate your own emotions as well, and really help you to handle stressful situations better.
Which mindfulness app you talking about?
Like Headspace and Calm.
Yeah, Calm, yeah. Headspace and Calm. Okay.
Exactly. And those are the most popular ones, I would say. In terms of what other resources are there? Of course, there's always getting professional help, getting I couldn't let that pass. Um, in terms of being able to navigate relationships well. Um, I think those are the things that immediately come to mind. Finding reading material, for example, and I will say, please be careful how you pay attention to social media, and make
In terms
sure
of what?
because there's a lot of material out there in social media, pronouncements, okay, and directions that are not evidence-based and that are not helpful. For example, people talking about, their narcissistic partner, and this is what you have to do. You have to put up boundaries, da 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 da, and it's completely baseless. You know what I mean? It's about getting followers and so on and so forth. It's about
Sensationalizing it.
sometimes, yes, sometimes the material will connect with you, but if it is not evidence-based, you cannot be sure that it will be of use to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I would say navigate social media information. It's not everything you read at all that is true or factual or helpful, is what I.
Okay.
And even when reading, and that goes for reading material too, always check what are the qualifications of the person to write what they are writing.
There it is. All right. Do you want? I know I'm gonna do this segment called Ask a Therapist. You want to do this? I'll give you like a situation, and you can give advice on it.
Sure.
So I think. So please for your advice. I'm 40 years old. I've been married for 10 years. I have two children with my husband, and he has been very good to me. I have not been well, but my husband is with me all the way. I know my illness has caused great strain on him, but he does not complain. I have learned that true love is about. Sometimes when I'm doing things around the house, he stops me and tells me to go and rest. I wonder sometimes if my husband is cheating on me. How can he do without making love for me for months? I asked him about it and he said that I should be ashamed of myself. I see girls around him whenever I go to church and I feel very jealous. I have lost one of my breasts and I asked my husband how he feels about me having only one. He said I look just as beautiful with one. That's nice. I'm not sure if my husband is speaking the truth. We have a helper and I had to beg her not to wear certain clothes to work because I do not want my husband to be tempted to go with her. She's a lovely young lady with a beautiful figure. After talking to her, she asked my husband if he's attracted to her and he told her no. She told him that I told her not to wear certain garments to come to work. My husband was very upset with me and I felt ashamed. I should not have told the girl not to wear to work because I was afraid that my husband would be tempted to have an affair with her. The girl gave us notice that she would leave the job and I had to beg her to stay. My husband has forgiven me for being so jealous and he's paying extra attention to me. Our helper has decided to stay. We had a family discussion and I had to apologize to her. I feel guilty for putting my husband under this type of stress. What do you think?
Well, from what I'm gathering, the only evidence that is making her feel insecure about her husband is her own figure and her own body. The fact that she has gone through these operations and she's been ill and so on. It
Yeah.
sounds like that's the only material she has that might suggest that he's unfaithful, right? And the fact that they're obviously not having intercourse as well. So I think I would understand that she would feel insecure, you know,
Yeah.
so much about her sense of self is undermined. You know what I mean? So much about her identity is being assaulted by this illness that she's going through. So I can understand her sense of insecurity. You know what I mean? I think that if she could get help to deal with that, ways to um, not judge herself so hard, you know, ways to she almost needs empathy with herself almost, she also could use support to gain self-acceptance in her new body, because I can hear, which would involve grieving that which is lost,
Yeah.
helping her to really grieve that part of her that's lost, that sense of femininity, not only the loss of the breast, etc. But I think that if she could get support to help her, because she's dealing with a huge stressor that is also having an impact on her mental health. You know what I mean? Is what would also help her. It's good that she can talk to her husband about it. It's good that he continues to be patient about it. He may also need support to continue to be able to support himself and her, through
Yeah.
crisis as well. But I think what she's going through is completely understandable.
Yeah.
And if she could get support to better deal with all of those huge emotions that she's dealing with. She's dealing with insecurity, she's dealing with guilt, she's dealing with inadequacy, she's dealing with fear and anxiety, fear of being rejected, fear of being left. Those are huge emotions that she's confronting, but she's using the emotions to tell her what is, rather than learning how to kind of process what's happening to her emotional state and what's happening to her.
Wow. Yeah. Her feelings are dictating what is,
Exactly.
yeah.
What is true and what is false,
Yeah, man. And I always say this to my female friends in particular, like your feelings aren't facts. You know what I mean? Like what you feel is not
What is, I
necessary.
heard this wonderful, is it, there's this wonderful lady who talks about emotional resilience. Her name is Susan, oh goodness. Anyway, but she says, feelings are data, they're not dictators.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of I'd say a lot of people sometimes would say how they feel as like what is, and really when you, especially when you get them to talk about what they're feeling, and you're kind of like, oh, how'd you come to that conclusion? And they break it down. They kind of say that, oh, there's nothing really concrete. It's just a cloud of emotion.
For sure.
All right, let me do this one. I am 25 and I'm having a problem. I come from a large family. I had to fend for myself when I was in my early teens. I have two other sisters and they had to do the same things. They got pregnant, but I didn't. I was just fortunate. When I became 19, I settled with one man. He was very helpful, but he told me that one thing I would have to get accustomed to is that he had other women. I told him I will not make that bother me. He made sure that I had money every week. I saw him twice per week. He always wanted sex, so I gave him. One day we were having sex at a place and we had to run for our lives. Men were after my boyfriend. I asked him what he did, but he did not want to tell me. I started to attend church, but I did not leave this man. I still depend on him for everything. Then I got baptized and I cut off everybody because the pastor helped me to get a job. A man in the church fell in love with me, and when we got married 2 years ago, I love him, but I am not. I am sure he loves me more. Oh, he has a nice home. I took one of my brothers to live with us. The man is 49. He does his own business. I do not want to stray, but he has not given me an orgasm. I have to help myself. When I told my husband that I was not happy with having sex with him, he said maybe I've seen some other man and that I want to go with. Oh gosh. But that is not the case. The last guy I had used to bring me to orgasm, and I was always satisfied. The only time I've come to orgasm while having sex with this man, I had to think that it was the other guy that was having sex with me. I know that is not right, but my husband does not play with me enough, and I think that is part of the problem. My ex-boyfriend used to have oral sex with me, but my husband is not into that at all. He said that Christians should not practice oral sex. I have everything to my comfort, but I need to be sexually satisfied. I cannot discuss this with anybody in the church, and I do not want to embarrass my husband by saying it to the pastor. There's a woman in the church, and the pastor said that woman can talk to her about any problems they are having with their husbands. But I will not talk to her about these things. She's about 70. I would like to know what I should do.
About 70.
Yeah. This is like, I feel like this is a very typical Jamaican problem. But yeah, what do you think?
Um, so that's one of the things we talked about earlier. So there's maybe a difference in libido and difference in sexual styles and sexual needs. I mean, I know the solution. I'm not sure how she can get there, but let's talk about it. The solution is that these are two people who need, guess what, the communication skills to talk to each other about what they need in sex, right? Okay, she obviously needs more foreplay than he's willing to give, it sounds like. The whole matter of oral sex is a difference that they have. through communication, hopefully they can come up with something else that might be just as satisfying for her. But there's obviously an impasse in communication about what they each want sexually. And that's a problem, right? She needs help to be able to have that conversation.
It sounds like yeah, I mean, I don't know, because that response he gave her, I was like, oh no, this guy's, yeah. She may want the help, but I feel like he needs to be willing to listen.
For sure. And so that's where communication, remember, communication includes not only listening, not only speaking, but listening, right? Being able to understand and empathize. And so again, as I said, that's part of the solution, that both of them kind of sharing their needs, trying, it's a three-step process, having the language to share what your needs are, having the language to listen to empathize, so both persons talking about what they need, and then both person empathizing with the other person. And those are the two things that they need to be able to negotiate. Well, where do we go from here? How can there is a way for us to overlap the things that we can negotiate on. It sounds like each of them have non-negotiables, right? But there's probably a lot they can negotiate, and with empathy they can get there. But she sounds as if she's constrained in who she can get help from.
Not from the church. I don't know how church represses. I would say, I don't want to say all churches, but I feel like there's a habit of repression when it comes to sex in church.
Yes, yeah. Well, there is not a lot of comfort around that matter. It's true.
I've never seen a sex ed talk at church. And I feel like that's what leads to so many people having sex and unwanted pregnancies in the church. Because it's not discussed. It's there, but nobody I would say it's like a white elephant. Yeah, I mean, like, it's there, but nobody pays attention to it or nobody talks about it. So it's there, and and then somebody just comes in with a belly. and it's
Actually,
just
I
kind of
think
like,
what often happens, there's another phenomenon too, where young people in the church get married too, because
they're horny
to deal with their sexual frustrations,
Yeah.
and to get married for that reason, the odds are against you, but also to get married so young, and the odds are against you as well,
Man, I saw that with my parents. My parents got married very young. You know what I mean? And it's good, honestly, because you raise your kids young, and you know what I mean. It's like you grow with your parents. But I just saw one. I don't think there are certain things I was like, man, I wish they had learned about that. But I'm very much thankful for how my parents raised me. I realized, they raised you well, but you do recognize, oh man, they got married young, and I don't know. Like, when do you think there's a certain time when you're like, this person is ready to get married? Do you see that or no?
Meaning they're not in a relationship?
No, man. I mean, like, is there a certain age? Like, you feel like somebody should get married when they're like 19?
Well, again, I'm just going to talk to you about statistics. The odds are against them because at 19, as I said, their prefrontal cortex is still
Has not developed. Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
at what age does it develop? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you, but at what age does it develop?
Your prefrontal cortex can continue to develop almost up until age 27, believe it or not. Usually around by about 24, 25 is when your brain development has fully matured. All the different structures in your brain have fully matured. But the implications of that is that just in terms of knowing yourself, developing philosophies about things, be able to evaluate situations, emotional things well, being able to emotionally regulate yourself, being able to make decisions, and understanding how to use emotions effectively rather than making decisions only by emotional stimulus, things like that are not well developed, and all of those can work against connecting with another person.
Man, that's it. Wow. So you think like 25? We're not saying like, oh, you have to get married at this age. Don't get married young. We're not saying that, but you feel like at a certain age where the prefrontal cortex is developed, it's kind of like, okay.
Have
Because
a
I
better
have to, yeah, I'm so honestly, man, I definitely realized, wow, man, like, there was a certain point where I made some incredibly stupid decisions. And I was like, yo, what the hell was I thinking? And then, like, after a certain age, you're like, there are certain things you don't do anymore. You're like, wow, yeah, your mind, it really is. That's why when some man there with some girl with 19, 20, 21, I'm like, bro, like, that person is not, they're not there yet. Like, you know what I mean? Any man, I told this to a friend of mine because, to be honest, man, like, a lot of, like, that story, I'm like, a lot of women always there with some big man. Like in them twenties, like girls in them twenties, there with some big man. And I'm always like, yo, what like the man, no matter what him tell you, you're not that mature for your age. Yeah, you know what I mean?
But Stephen, in that situation too, culture plays a big role, in that there is a hierarchy in that relationship that both people are signing up for, where
Mm,
where
okay.
the man has a certain power and influence in the relationship and the woman does not only because of his earning power, not only because of the society which we live in, not only because of his age. And so sometimes she kind of implicitly understands that role in a way,
Mm,
you know what I mean? So her expectations of herself and how she go, her future, how she going to show up in the relationship. She gets it. She knows the deal. She knows the contract that she's signing. She knows that
mm,
she's sometimes, it's not all the time, she knows
mm.
that she's signing up for a relationship where she's going to be taken care of, where she probably won't have a lot of independence. She's going to be more dependent emotionally, financially, logistically, you know what I mean? And that might be her expectation and what might actually be the reality for the relationship for the entire time, you know what I mean?
So you think, okay, is it like
So
a
I'm just saying
choice?
that to say sometimes it sometimes it's not as if to say, how should I say? It's not as if to say, I am passionate about pursuing self-actualization and, becoming the best me and figuring out myself first, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I'm in this relationship. Usually I feel my options are limited anyway. I feel like this is a good thing. I don't necessarily have many dreams for myself, etc., etc.
That's why you think the girl would go for that type of guy, or
Sometimes that is a reality, that this is what I'm signing up for.
oof, that sounds so messed up. Man. All right. Well, I think we have. Yeah, you
We have
definitely.
gone far and
We've
wide.
gotten far and wide. We really have. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm actually looking forward to editing this and posting this one. This is really good. This was
Oh,
a
thank
great
you
one.
so much. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for the opportunity. This is my favorite subject, couples.
Awesome,
I
man.
believe in love.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. Okay, so please tell people where they can reach you or they can get in contact with you. So.
Sure. So we're at TreeHouse Therapy Limited.
Mm-hmm.
Where we're on Instagram. We have a website. It's TreeHouse Therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's our handle on Instagram as well. We have one switchboard number. It's 876-823-5897. But you can send us direct messages on Instagram and through our website as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we're very supportive and compassionate and nurturing, So give us a call if you're really in distress, if you're really you're struggling with a lot of emotions, your mental health is having a hard time, your relationship is having a hard time. Give us a call. You don't have to suffer alone.
What's the price range?
Okay, it depends on which therapist you see, and it also depends on whether you do virtual or in person. So
Okay.
virtual sessions are $1,000 cheaper
Okay.
than in person,
Mm-hmm.
and our prices range from. So we have, trainee therapists, and we have more senior therapists. So the pricing would vary. but our prices go from 9,500 per hour to 12,500 per hour per
Okay.
session.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Sonia Wynter. Sonia Wynter. I don't know why. I don't know why I keep calling it.
That's okay.
Sorry, but
No
yeah,
problem.
it's a stigma. But all right. Thank you guys so much, and that is that for this episode.